So we've got a planned visit to Sheffield in June from Franklin Graham, who's a notorious hate speaker, who's on record making incredibly homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, generally massively offensive, inflammatory hate speech. And Sheffield International Venues, who run Sheffield Arena, are hosting part of his tour there. There's been multiple objections from the city's faith leaders, from LGBT groups, from the city's councillors, local residents, but so far they've fallen on deaf ears. So we've gathered here today to call on Sheffield City Trust to listen to the people who are affected by that sort of inflammatory hate speech and to reconsider the decision and cancel the booking.
Right. Speaking of that, though, if I may play here the devil's advocate, one will argue that there is still freedom of speech, and what happens to that?
I absolutely agree with the principle of freedom of speech, but there's a line that's crossed where freedom of speech crosses into hate speech. This isn't someone who's just saying, as many religious organisations do, that we maybe don't agree with same-sex relationships. This is someone who has described us as the enemies of civilisation, who has described us as perverts and paedophiles, who's used the type of language that inspires hate attacks. You know, we know as LGBT people that the risk that we face every day with rising levels of hate crime. We see in the papers every day people who've been violently assaulted based on the type of rhetoric that he spreads. So it's not a matter of freedom of speech. I'm more than happy to debate someone who I disagree with, but when you're crossing that line into very clear incitement to violence and demonising vulnerable and marginalised communities, it's not something that we should be allowing.
Do you fear when he comes to Sheffield he might alter similar speeches here?
I think it's almost irrelevant what he actually says when he's here. The fact that he is so publicly on record as having made his position clear already and having made those statements, it doesn't matter what he says once he's here. It's the fact of that will be seen as the city endorsing those statements. I know that Sheffield City Trust have put a statement out saying, oh, well, we don't endorse his views, but their actions say differently. If you're hosting him in the city's arena and giving him that platform, then your actions are endorsing him, regardless of what sort of statements you put out.
Well, if they say they don't agree with his views, at the end of the day, it's just a matter of freedom of speech as well. They do kind of accept freedom of speech. And this event, from my understanding, it's not going to be open publicly. It's going to be an indoor event. Do you think that's kind of understandable?
So, first of all, the event is open to the public. It's just not advertised from the arena as open to the public. It's advertised through Franklin Graham, but he has said it's an open public event that anyone can attend. So that's sort of factually untrue. But regardless of what they say, like I say, with them saying they don't endorse him, if you are providing him with that platform and that audience and that venue, your actions are endorsing him. And people are going to see it that way.
What can you say to critics as well who will think most of these statements were kind of issued in the United States? He's not going to do the same thing here.
This is someone that has 2 million followers just on Twitter alone, that is very close friends with Donald Trump, that has a massive international platform. So whether he made those statements in America or here, they have been viewed and heard globally. And it's something that we're very much aware of. And like I say, it's very easy to go, oh, well, it's freedom of speech if it's not something that's going to affect you. But as a member of one of the groups who is directly attacking, it affects our safety. It affects whether we can walk down the street of a night and not fear being beaten up because of that type of incitement.
As a resident of Sheffield, Sheffield is kind of considered as one of the most tolerant cities in the UK. Are you disappointed that the City of Trust is kind of hosting a person like this?
Absolutely. I mean, we are a city of sanctuary. We are an incredibly friendly and welcoming city. And I think that's been seen by the response. Franklin's visit has been universally condemned by all of the city's faith leaders, charity leaders, LGBT groups, city residents, councillors from all political parties. So the response across the city I'm actually really proud of, that people have said, do you know what, that's not representative of us. We don't want him here. But for some reason, Sheffield City Trust and David Gray, their chairman, is digging their heels in on it. So,
coming back to today's protest, what impact are you aiming for today's protest to achieve?
Ultimately, we want them to cancel the visit. We don't think he should be given that platform. He shouldn't be promoted in that way. The statement that they've put out in response has said that should the situation change, they may reconsider their decision. So we're here today to keep pushing to get them to reconsider that decision.